My name is Evan Coleman. I'm 48 years old, and for most of my life, I thought I understood what patience meant. Then I met the kind of neighbor that makes you question your sanity. The kind of neighbor that doesn't raise their voice, doesn't throw punches, doesn't break the law outright. They just slowly squeeze the life out of your peace, inch by inch, smile by smile, rule by rule, until one day you're standing outside your own gate wondering how in the world somebody convinced themselves they own something that legally belonged to you. And it all started with the sound of an engine and a car parked exactly where it didn't belong, right in front of my gate. I live just outside a place called Maple Ridge Estates, one of those perfectly manicured HOA neighborhoods where every mailbox looks like it was chosen by the same committee and every bush is trimmed to exactly the same level of fake perfection. My house is not in that HOA. I own my road, my gate, my land, every inch of gravel I pay to maintain, and for 12 years that mattered to absolutely nobody. Folks waved when they drove by, sometimes bought firewood for me, sometimes borrowed a tool and brought it back with a thank you pie. Life was simple, predictable, quiet until she arrived. Her name wasn't Karen, though the universe must have smiled at the irony. Her name was Brianna Hale. Blonde ponytail, expensive sunglasses, permanently confident like life itself had co-signed her personality. She didn't introduce herself like a neighbor. She introduced herself like management. The first real conversation I ever had with her was the day she left her glossy, pearl-white SUV parked directly across my gate like it was some kind of personal accessory she'd casually placed in my way. I honked. Once. Twice. No movement. I got out of my truck and called, "Hey, is this yours?" She turned around like I'd just complimented her. "Oh yeah," she said cheerfully, waving like she was blessing me. "I'll only be a minute." HOA meeting. Be neighborly. Neighborly. That word stuck in my teeth like a popcorn shell. I pointed to the big metal sign on my fence. Private road. No parking. Trespassers towed. She tilted her head like she was looking at a puppy misbehaving. "This road is community access," she said, slow and patient like I was the one confused. "And I'm vice president of Maple Ridge HOA, so relax." Then she turned and walked away. That was day one. It didn't stop. It didn't even slow down. One day, "I'll only be a minute" turned into an hour. Then two. Then "you can go around." Except there was no around. My business, my deliveries, my life all bottlenecked behind her entitlement. And the more I pushed back, the sweeter she sounded. "Evan, don't be dramatic. Evan, it's not a big deal. Evan, we're all neighbors here." That saccharine voice, that fixed smile, the tone of someone who'd already decided she was right, and the rest of us were just obstacles waiting to be rearranged. And the HOA backed her. Of course they did, because people like Brianna don't show their worst side to everyone. To the board, she was sunshine and muffins and volunteer hours. To me, she was a brick wall wearing lipstick. So I did the adult thing. I documented. Photos. Dates. Times. I called. I emailed. I filed concerns and got back polished answers like, "We'll review." Meanwhile, she escalated. Spray paint across my signs. Fake notices taped to my gate accusing me of blocking community easement. Neighbors I'd known for a decade suddenly looking at me like I was the problem. Somehow the narrative became that I was the angry truck guy ruining the serenity of their luxury dream life. And I probably would have kept swallowing it. I probably would have kept telling myself it'll calm down, she'll get bored, people like that burn themselves out. Until the day my mother came to visit. 80 years old, walker, hands shaking when she stands up too long. And Brianna's car was right there again, centered like a crown jewel in front of my gate. No apology, no explanation. Just there, blocking my own mother from getting to my home. That was the day the anger stopped burning hot and settled into something colder, steadier. Not rage, not recklessness. Resolve. Because there are moments when you stop asking for respect and start building a line no one gets to cross. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about a parking spot. It wasn't even about a car. It was about control. About someone who needed to prove that their rules extended farther than they actually did. Someone who believed titles granted ownership of other people's boundaries. And I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to punch. I wasn't going to vandalize or play games in the dark. If this was going to end, it was going to end the right way. Clean. Documented. Ironic in the most lawful sense. The kind of ending where consequences don't come screaming. They roll forward slowly, loudly, and absolutely impossible to stop. That decision, that quiet shift from frustration to clarity, that's where everything truly began. You ever reach that point where you're too tired to be angry anymore, so you just get organized? That's where I landed. Not pounding fists on the table furious, not hurling tools into the yard furious, just quietly, calmly done. Done with explaining, done with hoping she'd turn reasonable, done with trusting people who clearly had no interest in being fair. And honestly, that kind of calm is dangerous. Not because it makes you reckless, but because it makes you precise. I called Mark Alvarez, a friend of mine who happens to be a lawyer that doesn't talk like a lawyer. No fancy language, no fog of legal smoke. Just straightforward. Evan, don't yell. Don't threaten. Don't push. Document. Warn. Give notice. Build such a paper trail that if this thing ever blows up, it collapses on her side, not yours. So that's what I did. I turned my frustration into a checklist. First step, prove the land was mine. Not just emotionally, not just morally, but legally without argument. Deeds, county records, survey maps going back a decade. Everything lined up clean as daylight. That little road, that gate, that gravel. I paid for every inch and could prove it 10 different ways. And holding those papers in my hand, suddenly the whole situation felt less like a fight and more like a puzzle I already had the picture for. Next came notice. Not some handwritten scribble. Not a text. Not a, hey, can you not do that? I went official. Certified letter with her name printed sharp on the front, stamped, recorded, receipt signed and scanned. The tone wasn't angry, wasn't sarcastic, just simple and firm. Commercial access will be required. Vehicles blocking this private road, after documented warning, will be considered trespassing and handled accordingly. Short, calm, unmistakable. Then I posted new signs, big reflective ones. Not those flimsy plastic things wind tears off in a week. Heavy metal, bright lettering, professionally drilled into real posts. I didn't want maybe she didn't see it, or maybe she misunderstood. I wanted clarity. And honestly, I wanted it so obvious that even someone determined to ignore reality would have to walk past the truth on her way to lie about it. I upgraded cameras too. 2 new units, one staring right at the gate, one watching the approach road. High resolution, time-stamped, cloud-backed, so nobody could accidentally lose the footage. They didn't just watch the gate, they remembered it. In color, in detail, every second, every arrogant inch. And here's the thing. When people talk about petty revenge, they picture wild, spur-of-the-moment stunts. But this wasn't petty. This was slow, methodical patience sharpening into something unshakable. I didn't want theatrics. I wanted accountability. And while I was planning, Brianna kept being Brianna. She stood there one morning with 2 other HOA board members, pointing her phone at my property like she was shooting a documentary no one asked for. When I walked up, she didn't even pretend to be civil anymore. "You're harassing the community, Evan," she said, folding her arms like a judge handing out a sentence nobody appealed. "By owning my land?" I asked. "By refusing to cooperate," she shot back. "This road serves Maple Ridge, whether you like it or not. You don't get to isolate yourself like a king with a moat." And there it was. Not about parking. Not about convenience. About control. About someone who could not stand the idea that something existed nearby she didn't rule over. I remember smiling, not out of happiness, but because in that moment I understood her completely. She wasn't confused. She wasn't mistaken. She just believed she deserved authority she didn't have. So I didn't argue. I didn't lecture. I just said, "Brianna, I'm done talking. But I promise you something. The day consequences arrive, you won't be able to say you weren't warned." She laughed. Actually laughed. "You won't do anything," she said, adjusting her sunglasses. "Guys like you never do. You just complain." And if this were a movie, lightning would have cracked behind her when she said it. But real life doesn't give you dramatic thunderstorms. Real life gives you Monday mornings and paperwork and quiet, stubborn men with trucks. I scheduled a legitimate delivery run for my business. Big one. time-sensitive, heavy load, legal manifest, signed contract, dates locked in. This wasn't a stunt. This wasn't some stage gotcha. This was work. Real, documented, unavoidable work that required access to my gate. And then slowly, carefully, I made sure everyone knew about it. The HOA, the county, the sheriff's department. Not begging permission, just informing them. Calmly, respectfully, transparently. I didn't want surprise. I wanted witnesses. The night before the scheduled day, I didn't sleep much. Not out of fear, more out of that restless anticipation your brain gets when it knows something is finally going to end. I walked through my house in the quiet, coffee cooling in my hand, watching my cameras on my phone. I thought about my mother sitting in the car that day, tired and too proud to complain. I thought about neighbors who stopped talking to me because gossip is easier than truth. I thought about how peace feels and how much I wanted it back. And right around 5 in the morning, I drove down to the gate. And there it was, her car, white paint ghostly in the early light, parked perfectly, centered like it was meant to be there. No doubt, no question, no room for interpretation. I stared at it for a long minute, not angry, just steady, and I left one last voicemail. Brianna, this is your last chance. Trucks are coming. Move your car. No answer. Of course. The sun crawled up. The air got clearer, and slowly, like a waking animal stretching its shoulders, the big rig rolled into view. Diesel hum, steel weight, tired patience, and for the first time since this crazy mess began, I didn't feel helpless. I felt ready. Ready to let the truth finally speak louder than someone's ego. Ready to let choices meet consequences. Ready to watch entitlement run into something it couldn't intimidate. No shouting. No panic. No drama. Just inevitability. And if you're still here, buckle up. Because what happened next didn't just change a neighborhood. It reset the entire balance of respect. There's a sound you never forget. Not because it is loud, but because it is final. That morning, when everything lined up exactly as the law allowed and reality finally caught up with ego, the world didn't explode. It didn't turn into chaos. It simply shifted. And once it shifted, there was no shifting back. The deputy arrived first, leaning against his cruiser, arms folded, expression neutral like a man who had already seen the paperwork and knew exactly why he was there. My cameras were rolling. My crew was ready. Everything was silent except for that heavy diesel engine idling like a patient animal waiting for a signal. I gave one more warning, one more horn, one more chance, and Brianna still didn't come. So the truck moved. Slow, controlled, no drama, just work meeting resistance. The big rig eased forward, inches at a time, the way a glacier moves across rock. Unstoppable not because it is angry, but because it simply must. When the bumper touched her car, there was almost a gentle hesitation, like the universe giving her one last miracle window to appear. She didn't. So the pressure continued, metal meeting weight, and then the quiet morning air tore open with the sound of steel surrendering. Plastic cracked. Glass trembled. The rear of her perfect luxury SUV folded like a cheap paper cup under a boot heel. Not smashed in rage, compressed by inevitability. The crowd that had slowly begun gathering from Maple Ridge stood frozen. Some gasped. Some filmed. Some just stared like they were watching a belief system collapse. That is when she finally appeared. Running. Screaming. Hair flying. Sunglasses crooked. Voice shaking between fury and panic. Stop. You cannot do this. That is my car. That is my property. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel cornered. I didn't feel like the problem. I simply raised my voice enough for everyone to hear and said, "You were warned. On paper. On signs. On camera. By phone. By letter. You chose this." She tried to argue. She tried to shout law she didn't understand. She tried to wave authority she didn't have. The deputy walked up, calm as Sunday morning, and explained in that maddeningly simple tone that kills every argument. "Ma'am, this is private land. You were notified. This is trespassing. This is consequence." Her husband arrived in slippers and panic. The HOA president showed up and looked like he wanted to dissolve into the pavement. Neighbors whispered. Phones recorded. Someone said quietly behind me, "I guess the rules really do go both ways, huh?" And Brianna, the woman who once treated this street like her kingdom, suddenly looked very small, standing next to a car that now looked like a crushed soda can. And just like that, the performance ended. No criminal charges. No arrest. No dramatic court swoop to save her. Insurance denied her claim because negligence is not a covered feature, no matter how expensive your SUV is. Her attempt to sue lasted about as long as it took her lawyer to scroll through the documentation. The HOA turned on her faster than a flock turns on a wounded bird when they realized she had dragged their entire reputation into the fire. Turns out once sunlight hits manipulation, it stops being impressive and just looks ugly. She lost her title, then her standing, then her comfort. Little by little, the empire of intimidation she had built out of paperwork and attitude crumbled. One day I drove by Maple Ridge and saw a for sale sign in her yard. Her husband moved first. She followed later. Some people said she went to start fresh somewhere new. Some said she needed a community that understood her. Some said nothing, because honestly, the neighborhood just breathed better without her there. And peace, real quiet, returned. No cars blocking my gate. No fake notices taped to my fence. No neighbors avoiding eye contact out of fear of offending her. Just pine trees, gravel work, oxygen, and dignity. My mother came back to visit in the spring. She stepped out of the car, smiled gently at the clear road, and said, "Looks like you finally got your peace back." I nodded. I think that is when I truly felt it. Not triumph, not victory, just balance. People always ask me whether I regret it, whether crushing her car was too far, whether I should have been nicer or handled it differently. And I always answer the same way. I didn't crush that car out of anger. I didn't do it to humiliate anyone. I didn't do it because it was fun or dramatic or cinematic. I did it because I was done begging for basic respect on my own land. I did it because paperwork, patience, and boundaries matter. I did it because some lessons only sink in when they finally meet something heavier than ego. And sometimes consequences just weigh 40 tons. So here is where I leave it to you. Was I right? Was I wrong? Was this justice or just stubbornness wearing a badge that day? If you were me, would you have done the same thing, or would you have walked away and let entitlement win a little longer? Tell me. I want to hear it. Comment what you think, argue it out, share your own HOA nightmare or your own boundary battles, because I promise you, everyone has at least one story. If you stayed with me to the end, thank you. If this made you feel something, laugh a little, get mad, or just nod in quiet satisfaction, share it. And if you believe boundaries deserve respect and patience still has power, stick around. Because life has a funny way of delivering stories like this when you least expect them.